Gentlemen, let me start with something real. Something most men over 60 feel, but almost never say out loud. You don't feel older the day your hair turns gray. You don't feel older when your knees crack or when you finally buy reading glasses. No, for most men, the moment aging becomes real is when your body stops responding the way it used to in the most private part of your life. And every man who's lived long enough knows that moment. That sudden weakness. That strange tightness. That slow, squeezed feeling in the groin right when things should be opening, not closing. And then the moment that hits the hardest when the response you once counted on simply isn't there. Most men try to shrug it off. They say, well, I'm getting older. It happens. But I want you to hear me clearly. I'm Dr. Amelia Hayes. I'm a board-certified urologist. And after working with thousands of American men for more than 2 decades, I can tell you this with confidence. For many men over 60, the very first warning sign of declining health isn't memory loss. It isn't chest discomfort. It isn't fatigue. It's changes in circulation in the most sensitive area of the body. That tight, cramp-like, pressured sensation you feel? That's not your imagination. That's not just aging. That is your blood vessels sending you a message. A message that your circulation is struggling. A message that your tiny arteries, the ones responsible for firmness, warmth, response, and confidence, are becoming stiff, narrow, or slow. And here's the important truth. When you ignore that message long enough, it doesn't just affect intimacy. It affects your energy, your metabolism, your mood, your long-term cardiovascular health. Because the area down there is the first part of the male body to react when circulation drops.
When men hit their 50s and 60s, the first place circulation begins to struggle isn't the heart, and it isn't the big arteries you hear about on the news. It's the tiny microvessels that feed the most sensitive area of your body. These vessels are thinner than a human hair, incredibly delicate, and they're the very first part of your cardiovascular system to stiffen, narrow, or spasm as you age. That tight, pressured, cramp-like feeling some men notice during arousal is simply the body saying, blood can't move the way it used to. It's not your hormones, it's not your desire. It's not a lack of masculinity, it's circulation struggling at the smallest, most vulnerable point in your body. If you could see these microvessels under a microscope, they look like a kinked garden hose trying to force water through a narrow bend. The blood wants to move, but the pathway is restricted. And because these vessels are responsible for response, firmness, sensitivity, and comfort, even a small decline in their flexibility leads to big changes in how your body reacts. Most men don't realize this because no one ever explains it to them. They assume something is wrong with their libido or their testosterone, when in reality the tiny arteries that handle rapid blood flow are simply tired, inflamed, or stiff. When these vessels can't open fully, the tissue doesn't feel the way it used to, the sensation changes, and the body feels slower, tighter, and less responsive during intimacy. And here's the uncomfortable truth. This decline starts long before a man feels it in his chest or notices changes in his stamina. The intimate area is the first place where circulation problems show up because the microvessels there are the most fragile and require the most nitric oxide, flexibility, and pressure control to function normally. This is why so many American men notice tightening, slower response, or a dull pressure down their ears before any doctor ever mentions blood pressure or heart health. It's not aging, it's blood flow. And the good news is that these vessels can improve when you give them the right support. One of the clearest examples of this came from a patient of mine named Robert, a 68-year-old retired truck driver from Tennessee. He walked into my office, sat down, and said something I've heard from thousands of men across the country. Doc, it's not that I'm not interested. It's that the moment things start happening, everything feels tight and slow. Like the blood just can't get where it needs to go. That single sentence described his entire problem. His desire was still strong, his hormones were perfectly normal, his masculinity was intact, but his circulation, the microvessels responsible for rapid response, was struggling. When we looked deeper, Robert showed clear signs of early microvascular stiffness. This kind of stiffness doesn't happen overnight. It slowly builds after decades of sitting long hours, dealing with stress, eating salty foods on the road, dealing with blood sugar swings, not drinking enough water, and losing nitric oxide as he aged. By the time men reach their late 60s, nitric oxide levels often drop as much as 50%. And those tiny vessels become reactive, tense, and easily locked up. Robert wasn't broken. His body wasn't failing. His arteries were simply tight, tired, and hungry for support. And here's the part one want every man to hear clearly: these small vessels are still alive. They're still repairable. They're capable of becoming flexible again. They can open, expand, and respond just like they used to when you give them the right nutrients and the right daily rhythm. That is exactly where the first powerhouse food enters the picture. A food most men walk past in a grocery store without a second thought, but one that can raise nitric oxide faster than almost anything else you can eat. And for men like Robert, this one change can start turning things around in just days. The first powerhouse food I recommend for men over 60 is beets. And most men have no idea how much this simple vegetable can change their circulation. Beets are loaded with natural nitrates, which your body converts into nitric oxide, the molecule responsible for opening blood vessels, smoothly and naturally. Not forcing them, not overstimulating them, simply opening them the way a healthy vessel should. After 60, a man's nitric oxide levels can drop by nearly half. And that drop alone is enough to create the tightness, slow response, and pressure sensation so many men describe during arousal. Without nitric oxide, blood vessels stay narrow. Without nitric oxide, the tissue struggles to relax. And without nitric oxide, your body is trying to function through a straw instead of a full, open pipe. But here's the good news: when you eat beets or drink even a small amount of beet juice, your nitric oxide rises quickly, your vessels begin to relax. That deep, cramping tension starts to ease because blood is finally able to move again. I think about a patient of mine named Harold from Minnesota. He started drinking just 4 ounces of beet juice each morning, not a lot, not a complicated routine, just a small glass with breakfast. 2 weeks later, he walked into my office with the biggest smile and said, "Doc, I don't know what's going on, but things are responding again." That was nitric oxide at work, quiet, steady, powerful. But beets don't just improve performance. They warm circulation, improve energy, and support the tiny arteries that matter most. The effect is so noticeable that many men feel a difference within the first week. Still, nitric oxide alone isn't enough. You can open the pathway, but if the vessels are stiff or reactive, the blood still won't flow the way it should. That's why the second food matters even more for older men. Even though beets can raise nitric oxide quickly, nitric oxide by itself is not the full solution for men over 60. It is an essential starting point, but it can only do its job if the blood vessels are flexible enough to respond. Think of nitric oxide as a signal that tells your arteries, open up. But if those arteries have become stiff, reactive, or prone to spasms over the years, they simply can't open all the way, no matter how strong the signal is. This is why so many men try beet supplements, nitric oxide boosters, or performance pills and still feel tightness, slow response, or pressure during arousal. The chemistry is there, but the pathway is still rigid. As men age, the smooth muscle inside the tiny arteries becomes more sensitive, more tense, and more resistant to relaxation. When that happens, nitric oxide is like pressing the gas pedal in a car whose parking brake is still on. The body wants to respond, but the tension inside the vessel walls blocks the process. That's why so many older men describe a strange mix of desire and discomfort. They want intimacy, but the moment things begin, the area feels tight instead of warm and open. It's not psychological. It is vascular tension, and this tension builds slowly over years of stress, dehydration, inflammation, poor sleep, blood sugar spikes, and simple aging. Nitric oxide can open the door, but something else needs to loosen the muscles wrapped around that door. If those vessels can't relax fully, blood flow won't improve, firmness won't return, and that cramp-like sensation won't fade. So the next step is finding a natural way to calm those vessels, soften that tension, and allow the arteries to open wider and stay open longer. And that brings us to a food most men think of as a simple summer treat, when in reality, the real power is hidden in the part almost everyone throws away. The second food older men should pay attention to is watermelon, but not the sweet red part everyone enjoys in the summer. The real power is hidden in the pale white rind that most people slice off and throw away without a second thought. That rind contains one of the most valuable circulation-supporting compounds for men over 60, a natural amino acid called citrulline. Citrulline works differently from nitric oxide boosters. Instead of signaling the vessels to open, it helps the vessels relax so they can actually follow that signal. It reduces vascular tension, calms the smooth muscle around the arteries, and makes those tiny microvessels more flexible and responsive. This is extremely important because as men age, those vessels tend to spasm or tighten at the exact moment they should be expanding. That's what creates the deep, pulling sensation so many men notice during arousal, not pain, but a pressure that tells you blood flow is restricted. Citrulline helps correct that. Once it enters the bloodstream, the body converts it into a compound that tells the vessel walls to loosen and soften, allowing blood to move more freely. I think about a patient named Bill. a 67-year-old retired Navy veteran from San Diego. He looked me in the eye and said, "Doc, I still want intimacy, but it feels like my body is tightening." Instead of opening, that sentence perfectly described vascular tension. It wasn't hormones, it wasn't desire. It was his arteries resisting the moment. I asked him to blend the red part and the white rind of watermelon into a morning smoothie. 3 or 4 times a week. Just 2 weeks later, he returned and said, "Doc, I feel normal again. That tightness is easing up. Things are moving the way they should." That is what real circulation recovery looks like: calm, natural, steady improvement. But here's what most men miss. Watermelon doesn't raise nitric oxide the way beets do. Instead, it removes the tension that blocks nitric oxide from working. One opens the pathway, the other relaxes it, and until both pieces work together, blood flow will never reach its full potential. When you understand how beets and watermelon rind work inside the body, everything finally starts to make sense. Beets raise nitric oxide, giving your blood vessels a signal to open. Watermelon rind, with its citrulline, relaxes a vessel wall so they can actually respond to that signal. One acts like flipping the switch, the other loosens the wires so the power can flow. And this is exactly why so many older men struggle when they only focus on one approach. You can boost nitric oxide all you want, but if the vessels are stiff, tense, or prone to microspasms, the blood still won't move. It's like having a green traffic light but the road is still blocked. On the other hand, you can relax the vessels all you want, but if nitric oxide is low, which happens naturally after 6-0, there's nothing pushing the blood forward. The signal isn't strong enough to start the process. The real improvement happens when both systems work together, supporting each other like two gears in the same machine. When nitric oxide rises and the vessels soften at the same time, the body finally gets the conditions it needs for stronger, smoother, more responsive circulation. This is why many men notice warmth returning, tightness fading, and a stronger response when they combine these foods consistently. You're not forcing your body. You're restoring a natural mechanism that used to work effortlessly in your 20s and 30s. For older men, this synergy matters more than anything because after 60, the body doesn't respond to sudden pressure or chemical force, it responds to nourishment, rhythm, and balance. And this 2-part system beats for nitric oxide. Watermelon rind for relaxation creates the foundation for better blood flow. But there's still one more piece missing. Even if you open the pathway and relax the vessels, the tissue itself needs the right minerals to actually hold blood, stay firm, and maintain strength, and that's where the third food becomes a real game changer. The third food older men almost never think about, but absolutely should, is pumpkin seeds. These tiny, inexpensive seeds hold the exact minerals your intimate tissue depends on to respond, expand, and stay firm. Most men overlook them because they seem too simple, too ordinary. But inside each seed is a powerful combination of magnesium, zinc, and arginine, 3 nutrients that work together at the deepest biological level. Magnesium is the first powerhouse. Most men over 60 are deficient in it without even realizing it. When magnesium is low, the smooth muscles inside your blood vessels stay tight. That tension creates the same cramp-like pressure many men feel during arousal. Magnesium relaxes those muscles, softens that internal grip, and allows the vessels to widen so blood can flow in instead of being blocked. Zinc is a second essential nutrient. Zinc keeps your testosterone signaling properly. Without enough zinc, your receptors become sluggish and your hormones lose their clarity. When zinc levels rise, you feel more energy, more desire, and more responsiveness because your hormone communication finally wakes back up. And then there's arginine. This one is special because it's the raw material your body uses to make nitric oxide. Without arginine, nitric oxide stays low no matter how many foods or supplements you try. Since nitric oxide is a molecule that triggers the entire intimate response, arginine is like giving your body the fuel it needs to start the engine. Pumpkin seeds combine all 3 nutrients in a single natural source, which is why they are so valuable for men over 60. They don't force a reaction. They rebuild the foundation so the body can function the way it's supposed to. When the vessels are relaxed, the nitric oxide is available, and the minerals are in place. The tissue can trap and hold blood more effectively, which is exactly what creates firmness and strength. This is the part most men never realize they're losing over time. Without these minerals, the system flickers. With them, it stabilizes. And when you add pumpkin seeds to the beets and watermelon you're already using, the entire circulation chain becomes stronger, smoother, and far more responsive. Another patient who proved just how powerful this third food can be was Robert, a 72-year-old former Air Force mechanic from Oklahoma. He was strong, sharp, and disciplined, that kind of man who had spent his whole life solving problems with his hands. But when he sat down in my office, his voice softened in a way I'll never forget. He said, "Doc, I don't hurt. Nothing is painful. It just feels like everything down there is resisting me, like the system won't cooperate." That feeling where the body isn't broken, but isn't responding, is something countless older men experience, but rarely talk about. It's not failure. It's not loss of masculinity. It's a sign that the vessels and smooth muscle inside the tissue are too tense, too stiff, or too undernourished to do their job. Robert didn't need medication. He needed minerals. I told him to start with 1 tablespoon of raw pumpkin seeds each day. Not roasted with salt, not flavored, just plain raw seeds. He sprinkled them on oatmeal, tossed them into smoothies, and sometimes ate them by hand as an afternoon snack. Simple, natural, consistent. 3 weeks later, he walked into my office with a grin he hadn't shown in years. He said, "Doc, that tension is fading, and in the mornings, well, let's just say I'm getting reminders of the man I used to be." His improvement wasn't magic. It was biology finally getting the raw materials it needed. The magnesium relaxed the vessels, the zinc reactivated testosterone signaling, the arginine boosted nitric oxide production. Together, these minerals allowed his tissue to trap and hold blood again, which is the core of firmness and morning strength. And here's what matters: when the foundation comes back online, everything else improves: confidence, energy, mood, even the way a man carries himself. Robert didn't become younger. His system simply remembered how to work. And once that happens, real change begins. Now that you understand what each of these foods does on its own, the real breakthrough comes when you combine them. This is where men over 60 start noticing changes they haven't felt in years. Beets open the pathway by raising nitric oxide. Watermelon rind relaxes a vessel wall so the blood can actually move where it needs to go. Pumpkin seeds rebuild the foundation by supplying the minerals that allow the tissue to hold and maintain blood flow. Each food does something valuable, but together they create a kind of internal momentum your body can finally rely on. This is why so many men feel stuck when they only focus on one approach. If you boost nitric oxide without relaxing the vessels, the blood won't move. If you relax the vessels without enough nitric oxide, there's nothing pushing blood forward. And if you get blood flowing but don't provide the minerals needed to trap it and keep it there, firmness fades too quickly. Older men don't need force, they need synergy. They need all 3 steps working in the same direction. When circulation improves, everything improves, warmth returns, that dull tightness begins to fade. The sluggish response becomes more alive. Even energy and mood begin to rise because better circulation affects the entire body, not just intimacy. This is why supplements often disappoint older men. Pills force one reaction instead of supporting all 3. They skip the foundation. They skip the relaxation. They skip the nourishment. But when you use beets, watermelon rind, and pumpkin seeds together, you're not fighting your body. You're feeding it, guiding it, and restoring the natural processes that used to work effortlessly in your younger years. And the best part is that you don't need extreme diets, complicated routines, or expensive products. You just need consistency, small daily choices that create lasting changes inside your microvessels and smooth muscle. And that brings us to the next part: how to put all 3 foods into a simple, realistic daily routine that men over 60 can follow without stress or confusion. Now that you understand how each food supports your circulation, the real power comes from turning them into a steady routine your body can depend on. Once you're past 60, your system doesn't respond to force or sudden changes. It responds to rhythm, nourishment, and repetition. That means feeding your vessels the right signals at the right times of day consistently, so your microcirculation stays open, relaxed, and supported. Start your morning with beets. A small glass of beet juice or a serving of roasted beets is enough to wake up nitric oxide production and warm your circulation for the day. Think of it as gently starting the engine instead of stomping on the gas pedal. This morning boost prepares your vessels to open when you need them, giving you a smoother, more energized start. Late morning or early afternoon, bring in watermelon, and make sure you include some of the white rind. That's where the citrulline lies, the compound that relaxes the tiny arteries, feeding your most sensitive tissues. This step helps reduce that dull tightening sensation some men feel during arousal, and it keeps your vessels from spasming or staying tense. It's like loosening the grip around the arteries so blood can move freely. Later in the day, add 1 tablespoon of raw pumpkin seeds. These provide the magnesium that relaxes the vessel muscles, the zinc that restores healthy testosterone signaling, and the arginine your body uses to generate nitric oxide. This is the structural strength behind your response, the foundation that keeps blood in the tissue and maintains firmness. Follow this rhythm for a week and many men notice small but meaningful changes: warmer hands, better energy, less groin tension, and a more responsive body. For many, morning erections begin returning sometimes after years of fading away. These small signs mean your system is waking back up. And remember, this isn't about shortcuts or pressure. It's about giving your body the natural, steady support it needs so it can function the way it was designed to. Now that you understand how each food supports your circulation, the real power comes from turning them into a steady routine your body can depend on. Once you're past 60, your system doesn't respond to force or sudden changes. It responds to rhythm, nourishment, and repetition. That means feeding your vessels the right signals at the right times of day consistently. So your microcirculation stays open, relaxed, and supported. Start your morning with beets. A small glass of beet juice or a serving of roasted beets is enough to wake up nitric oxide production and warm your circulation for the day. Think of it as gently starting the engine instead of stomping on the gas pedal. This morning boost prepares your vessels to open when you need them, giving you a smoother, more energized start. Late morning or early afternoon, bring in watermelon, and make sure you include some of the white rind. That's where the citrulline lies, the compound that relaxes the tiny arteries, feeding your most sensitive tissues. This step helps reduce that dull tightening sensation some men feel during arousal, and it keeps your vessels from spasming or staying tense. It's like loosening the grip around the arteries so blood can move freely. Later in the day, add 1 tablespoon of raw pumpkin seeds. These provide the magnesium that relaxes the vessel muscles, the zinc that restores healthy testosterone signaling, and the arginine your body uses to generate nitric oxide. This is the structural strength behind your response, the foundation that keeps blood in the tissue and maintains firmness. Follow this rhythm for a week and many men notice small but meaningful changes: warmer hands, better energy, less groin tension, and a more responsive body. For many, morning erections begin returning sometimes after years of fading away. These small signs mean your system is waking back up. And remember, this isn't about shortcuts or pressure. It's about giving your body the natural, steady support it needs so it can function the way it was designed to. At the end of the day, this journey isn't just about circulation or performance. It's about identity, confidence, and the quiet pride a man feels when his body still works the way a man's body should. When circulation improves, you don't just feel stronger, you feel more present, more connected, more alive. Intimacy stops being a source of worry and becomes something you can look forward to again. And I want you to hear this clearly: your body has not given up on you, even after 60. Even after years of changes, even after moments of doubt, your system is still capable of rebuilding. When you create the right internal environment, beets open the path, watermelon calms the tension, pumpkin seeds rebuild the foundation. Together, they help restore strength, responsiveness, and confidence in a way no pill or quick fix ever could. I've worked with thousands of men through this exact chapter of life, and the truth is simple: you are not too old, not too late, and not beyond repair. When the vessels open, when the tension fades, and when the minerals support the tissues, your body remembers exactly what to do. And that memory brings back a part of yourself you may have thought was gone forever. If this message resonates with you, know that you are not alone. Men across the country are waking up to the same truth, that their vitality is still there, waiting to be supported. And the moment you take that first step, your journey back to strength begins. Because improving circulation isn't just about the body, it's about feeling capable, confident, and connected again in every part of your life.